First of all, the United States, we are a 50-50 country, so either guy could win. What's really interesting is these represent incredibly different paths between the two. What actually doesn't change is, I think, the transatlantic relationship. American support with partnership in Europe, that's going to be there. Particularly as somebody who has spent a lot of time with President Trump and his people. If Trump were the president, he would support Ukraine. He would support NATO. It actually, I think, would be a stronger partner for Europe than Biden would. The natural approach of an American president to Europe is to want to partner with Europe from the bottom up, right? So if it's Biden, it's you go to Brussels, you go to Berlin, you go to Paris, and you're done, and then you go back home. I think an American Republican president is going to start in the East and work his way back, not start in Paris and Brussels and Berlin and ignore everybody else. Well, I think we've already reached a point of strategic stalemate in Ukraine. Either president, certainly a Republican president, would want to continue to see a free and independent Ukraine. Nothing is easier for the United States, or for Europe for that matter, if Ukraine is conquered by Russia. We all get that. The Americans are going to want more European defense spending. And I think people misinterpret this. It's not, we want the Europeans to do more so America can do less and go to other places, because the reality is we have an interest in Europe as well. We're going to do our part, but we need Americans and we need more Europeans. So I do think that increased European defense spending is absolutely essential. And it's not just more it's the industrial base, the capacity to build munitions and equipment and develop new systems. So I actually think that partnership will be quite robust. But I think the future of Ukraine is going to be determined on the ground, not at some table. I think the reality is that Ukraine is going to look more like Germany in 1945, or Korea in 1953, or Israel in 1968. The border is going to be determined by where the forces are, and people are going to have to live with that division for a long time. I don't think the Ukrainians are ever going to relinquish their claim to sovereignty over their land, as is just. On the other hand, I think the likelihood of them taking that land back by force is not going to happen. I think it's incredibly, it's not just wrong-headed and mistaken, it's immoral. If we could create a Palestinian state today, like just magically create one, what would it look like? It would be a tool of the Iranians. It would be massively oppressive its own people, completely corrupt and venal. It would be an enemy of Israel, and it would be a state sponsor of terrorism. Anybody that supports it essentially has just said October 7th is okay, that the rape and the murder of innocent people is okay. So it's not just a bad policy, it's a completely bankrupt and immoral policy. The problem with Israel and Iran going to war is there's a lot of countries in between. And so they really can't get at each other. All they could do is fire a bunch of missiles and drones back and forth. That's a very inconclusive and open-ended thing. And I just don't see how either country could really afford to go there, or really to get to a wider conflict. So I do think that there are limited steps that both sides are willing to take. I mean, I have to remember, the number one objective of the Iranian regime is to preserve the Iranian regime. So my guess is, if they get overly confrontational, even with an American president that tries to engage with Iran, they're not going to get very far.